Welcome to a special edition of the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst podcasts combined into one here because we're going to talk about the two audiobooks that I've been doing for the Merriman Market Analyst team, Evolutionary Astrology, a classic book that we're going to talk about here in a minute. It is available now on the website. And while you're there, you can now pre-order the 2026 forecast audiobook on the website. So we're going to talk for a few minutes about each book and then play a little excerpt from each one. But if you'd like to jump straight to the books where you can pick them up, here's what you do. There are two places where the books are listed. One is, and this is where you're going to buy it from ultimately, MMAcycles.com. But on my website, hightimelineliving.com, I have put them side by side right at the top. So if you'd like them at your fingertips, hightimelineliving.com, and that will link you to MMAcycles.com. So that just saves you some searching around. Let's talk for a minute about evolutionary astrology again. On October 18th, I released Chapter 1 on Fun Astrology. So if you go back to the previous episodes on Fun Astrology, which is a good scroll because it's a daily 6 days a week podcast, but go back to October 18th, then you'll hear Chapter 1 in its entirety. That was an allegory, and I love how a 20-something-year-old Ray Merriman set this up, taking us to the caves of Qumran back 2,000 years ago, when a very monumental event took place on planet Earth and brought that forward. Oh, it's such an amazing chill. I still get chills, and I haven't listened to it for a couple of weeks, but I go back and I listen to Chapter 1 over and over and over because basically he sets up the possibility in this allegory. Maybe we were there then, and maybe we're back now for this next very special event on planet Earth. And then the whole book is about the journey of the soul. That is evolutionary astrology. Now, I'm going to confess, I knew this, but I had forgotten it. And when I was reminded by AI, I was like, oh, yes. I've narrated 6 books for Stephen Forrest. He obviously is a main trumpeter of evolutionary astrology. And I remembered that he had attributed the name evolutionary astrology to Raymond Merriman. In the fog of having a lot of balls in the air and just processing a lot of information, I had forgotten that little detail, but I looked it up, and this was the genesis of evolutionary astrology, was this book. Now, the other thing, a lot of people get intimidated. Well, I don't know if I can understand the charts and all that. You get a PDF that has everything so you'll see it, not just listening to a chart trying to be described. So it really is the perfect way to take in the book. With the PDF, you get the visual, the audible, the audio. This is one that you can listen to. I'm telling you, this is an evergreen over and over and over until this material permeates you. And it's not theoretical. In fact, my favorite chapter, I think, was Chapter 16. I say I think because there were so many good ones. There's chapters on the nodes of the moon. There are 2 chapters on the nodes, how they affect our soul path. But Chapter 16 is a technique involving the transit of Saturn. This technique shows you how to pick key crisis points, if you will, where you should say fate meets growth meets personal will. And it's on about a 3 to 3.5 year cycle where Saturn hits these points that are very clearly laid out in your chart. And one of the things that slows me down narrating a book like this is that when I read a chapter like that, I have to go to my own chart and try it. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, I got to do this. And oh, wow, I correlated some things, some big major things in my life back to these points that are discussed there in Chapter 16. And it was like, oh my goodness, one after another of major life events correlated to the movement of Saturn transiting around the chart. There is a major technical theme that goes through the book, and that is, and it's right in the description on the website too, that it follows the angle points in the chart, the ascendant, the midheaven, the descendant, the imum coeli. I asked Gianni De Poci, how would you pronounce IC, imum coeli? Coeli. There's a lot of different pronunciations out there, and I looked at the dictionaries and I checked on AI, and I really drilled down on that, and coily seemed to be the best answer. So thanks, Gianni, for helping me through that one. And he was in Italy when we talked about it. Can't get any better than that. So let's let the book speak for itself now. This is a 6-minute excerpt from Chapter 8. Boy, this is the clip of the book that really sets everything up, talking about our path, our evolutionary path, and the very important role of karma in that path as well. You'll probably hear a little bit about your own journey in here, and we'll play this, then come back and talk about Forecast 2026 for a few minutes. To understand how these principles work in the model of evolutionary astrology, it may be helpful to again look at the fourfold construct of the angles of the horoscope. See Figure 9 in your PDF. The IC represents the point where the soul is in closest contact with the spirit, where there is a sense of oneness between the incarnating being, the soul, and creative source, the God within. There is a sense of union here. This is the essence of the soul. When a being expresses itself from this point of understanding, the result is the opposite point, the midheaven. This is the potential manifestation of the highest aspect of the soul's essence in the world of form. This is a challenge for the soul to accomplish in this incarnation. The essence of the soul, the IC, is ideally manifested in the form signified by the midheaven. Thus, the midheaven is one's calling in life, one's destiny. It is achieved by putting forth the truths reflected in the IC in the form indicated by the midheaven. The process of connecting the essence of the IC to the form and potential of the midheaven is put into effect through the ascendant. The ascendant symbolizes the initiation of activity and the consciousness of the intent behind that activity. The purpose of the activity, when the intent is pure, is to attain the form symbolized by the midheaven. The result of the activity, and all the dynamics that go into initiating the activity, such as intentions and motivations, are symbolized by the descendant. The descendant represents the consequences of one's actions initiated at the ascendant. From one's effort and intent, conscious and unconscious, springs forth circumstances, conditions, and other people as denoted by the descendant. These circumstances and/or people support or reflect the intent symbolized by the ascendant. From this model, it becomes apparent that the horizon, bordered by the ascendant-descendant axis, represents the intent of consciousness and its consequences. In the natural order of the day, the sun rises at the ascendant, the earth awakens from darkness, the physical body awakens from the sleep state, the soul incarnates into the physical body, birth takes place. The soul must now make choices between the home it came from, the IC, and the home it will go to, or its destination, the midheaven. In the process, it must protect its physical vehicle. It must struggle to survive the journey. There is a path between the IC and the midheaven, between the essence of the soul and the highest potential form in which the soul comes to express itself according to its own unique plan of destiny. Yet, along the way come challenges, obstacles, and temptations that can and do distract the soul from this purpose. These arise with regard to the matter of survival, both physical and psychological. As the soul incarnates into the physical vessel, it has already contracted to undergo experiences that are reflective of its karma, or past actions, that are part of a cyclic phenomenon not yet completed. From these prior experiences and reactions to them, the soul has not only initiated various cycles, but also developed various skills, referred to earlier as developed powers and abilities. These developed powers and abilities may enhance the soul's journey. In the case of abilities, they depict strengths that may enhance the struggle for survival. In the case of powers, they may enhance the soul's potential to transcend the world of duality and physical phenomena, and to quicken the journey back to oneness with spirit, to experience an integration of soul to spirit. That part of the path consists of many enlightenments. However, the incarnating soul has probably made some choices and initiated some activities which have inhibited its development. When given the choice, the individual in prior lifetimes has likely made some choices to center itself upon itself instead of upon God. It has likely chosen at various opportunities to do that which it knew violated natural law, in a manner which benefited its lower self at the expense of another or others. In doing so, the individual gave rise to cycles which can be described as patterns or scripts. These patterns are karmic in nature. They are reflected in relationships, work, and health patterns of an inhibiting nature. They represent violations of natural law, violations of one's own understanding and reflection of its higher self. Around these cycles, one has developed an ego, a personality complete with elaborate and complex psychological defenses, which the conscious mind now sees as being very real, and yet they are not. How did the soul get to this point? What choices did it make? What choices could it have made? And finally, how do these matters show up in the natal horoscope according to the principles of evolutionary astrology? And with that, it drops you off right at the front porch of the book. I mean, come on in, enter the house, kick off your shoes, and enjoy learning about your karmic path. The book is about 11 and a half hours in all. There's also the PDF so you can follow along with all the visuals. Go to hightimelineliving.com right at the top, side by side with forecast, and you can click it. It will take you to the book straight away at mmacycles.com where you purchase it. Everything is available for instant download. Now let's pivot over to Forecast 2026. When I started on evolutionary astrology in September, I believe it was, knowing that Forecast was coming, another author that I've narrated books for since 2013, Fred Dodson, sent a book called Conversations with Our Creator, which is a great book too. And I did that simultaneously. So 3 audiobook balls up in the air at once there for a while, then 2, then 1, and we got Forecast finished here recently, and it is now on the website available for pre-order. The release date is December 15th. That's when all the versions are delivered. As in the past, the audiobook takes you up to the market data, and then that's where the audiobook stops. Why is the market data not included? Well, for one, that keeps it over on the print versions, and second, as a listener, it would be hard to follow. But this gives you the whole setup for what the year is going to look like. The geocosmics, what's going on in the sky. Elaborate explanations this year of the Aries vortex. On Fun Astrology, we started calling it the Great Pyramid, because if you just look at it on the chart, and obviously you have a stubby little pyramid, I thought, well, let's call it the Great Pyramid. But in an earlier forecast book, I believe it was the 2022 book, that Ray introduced the Aries vortex. And one of his students, who also was involved in the design of the covers of the Forecast 2026 book, her name is Kat Powell. She's a graphic artist out of Denver and has been an MMA student for a long time, for over 10 years. And there's a graphic in the chapter about the Aries vortex that shows why they called it that. So the Aries point, 0 degrees Aries, of course, where Saturn and Neptune are sitting a couple of degrees away from now, and they're retrograde back into Pisces, but that's the focal point. Then on the wings of the funnel, you have obviously Pluto and Uranus, that together making this structure, and those points are in essence pulling on each other, hence the term vortex. In this year's book, each planet of the vortex, so there are 4 because Saturn and Neptune are conjoined now. Eventually, Saturn moves faster than all of the others, so it will pull on its way and go on, leaving Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus behind in that same vortex or pyramid formation for at least another 3 years. So there are individual chapters, and this year they were written by Puyan Zolfagarnia, and he does an amazing job. He's a good wordsmith. Puyan is a really good wordsmith. So you're going to enjoy listening to his narrative of Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, and another key player, Jupiter in Leo. This year, each planet in the pyramid/vortex got its own chapter. There's a chapter on 2026 and the Aries vortex, bringing it all into context, how it's going to unfold this year, particularly when Saturn and Neptune conjoin at that 0 Aries point on February 20th, 2026. That's the domino trip. So this chapter sets that up as to what it's going to look like once that fires off this year. We're still in the lull. Those 2 planets are in retrograde. But once that domino trips, then the rest of this unfolds, and that's where the individual planet treatments come into play. And then also the big chapters that are always included in this section of the book. There's a chapter on the Federal Reserve and its outlook for next year, the United States for next year, the U.S. president, what's the astrological outlook for Donald Trump in 2026, there's a chapter on the lunar nodal cycle and the economy, very important if you're not familiar with Louise McWhorter's 18-and-a-half-year lunar nodal cycle, and Ray brings it forward from her work that was back in the 1940s. That chapter is very important for 2026, but I'm going to tell you, I think the one that is perhaps the most significant, it's the last chapter in the book. It's Seasons 2026. It's where it begins with right now, winter of 2025, and then it follows the seasons, the spring equinox, the summer solstice, the fall equinox. That's the one. If you bought this book and did not listen to I would start at the last chapter. I would start at chapter 26. I don't know that would be the best thing because some of the setup isn't there, but that one is the one that you want to have open and be referencing all through the year. I'm going to do that on Fun Astrology. We're going to, when we turn the page on the seasons, I'm going to go back to that to those chapters, and we're going to bring it back out and talk about some of those things that are important. But this is where this book is absolutely a roadmap through a very critical year in our history. So let's go to that chapter. This is the chapter on 2026 and the Aries vortex. Give you about 6 or 7 minutes here. Welcome to Crazy Times 2026. This is the time of the long-anticipated Aries vortex, an extremely rare celestial configuration centered on and linked to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the very first degree of Aries. Aries itself is the very first of the 12 signs and marks the beginning of the world cycle according to astrology, the world's oldest discipline exploring the correlation between cycles in the cosmos and cycles in human activity. Why are these crazy times? Because Saturn and Neptune correspond to more terms used in abnormal psychology than any other 2 planets. They represent very opposite dynamics, such as fear and hope, guilt and forgiveness, certainty and disillusionment, mania and depression, irrational exuberance and panic. And in the first degree of Aries, this setup indicates a monumental shift from the end of one long-term cycle, Pisces, to the beginning of a new one, Aries. That is, Neptune only crosses into Aries every 164 years. Saturn does the same approximately every 29 years. The 2 planets conjoin one another every 36 years. But how often do these 2 planets conjoin one another right at the end and beginning of the 12 signs? Our database goes back to about 4000 BC. And there are no instances of this same cosmic feat during that time. Some astrologers have suggested that this cosmic configuration happened at some point between 4000 and 8000 BC, but I cannot confirm that. To understand why the Aries vortex of 2025 and 26 is akin to crazy times, consider 2 things. 1, what is happening today, and 2, the principles associated with Saturn and Neptune, combined with the classic principles of Aries versus Pisces, the beginning of the cycle of signs versus the end of that cycle. In this case, it's not just an ordinary cycle, but a very long one, over 4,000 years in duration at least. We must also take into account that the other two outermost planets, Uranus and Pluto, are in a favorable trine aspect, with their midpoint also crossing back and forth over 0 degrees Aries, the very point of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. These may seem like crazy times because they are unfolding under a geocosmic configuration that humanity has never before seen or experienced. Cosmic patterns this rare will usher in global changes of great magnitude, and life may seem so different that it feels a bit crazy. As we consider what has transpired already during the Orb of Influence, which began in early 2025 when Saturn and Neptune entered Aries, followed by Uranus entering Gemini, and shortly Pluto finally entering Aquarius in November of 2024. It's apparent that vast transformations are underway across multiple sectors of human activity. Figuratively speaking, everything that is supposed to be up has turned down, and everything that would normally be expected to turn down has instead turned up. What was previously regarded as diplomacy in the pursuit of world peace and global order has instead become driven by coercion and land or money grabbing, with little regard for consent or fairness toward those affected. The belief that might is right and therefore entitles one to dictate the course of civilization rather than cooperate toward win-win outcomes and mutual benefit has become the new normal of global leadership. This reflects one of many expressions of Saturn in Aries, the bully, which will remain largely in effect through April 13, 2028. On a more positive note, Saturn in Aries can also represent superhuman efforts to build systems and structures that stand the test of time. However, this process is unlikely to unfold without resistance and struggle. Hence, there is often a challenge to authority and dominance. And without mutual respect among all parties involved, this can lead to conflict or even the threat of war, where those with the most might can claim superiority and the mantle of power. Yet it is not just Saturn in Aries that indicates the harsh challenges that many experience today, especially those who find it difficult to adjust to this new reality, Aries. It is also Neptune, the planet of ideals, altruism, and the search for beauty and truth. Those guiding life principles are also being challenged. So you can see why this book is so important, because working through those challenges is what this road maps out in front of us. I cannot imagine going into 2026 without this book, seriously. So, how do you get it? Well, once again, go to hightimelineliving.com, and both books are right at the top. They will click you through to mmacycles.com, right to the product purchase page for each. And just to reiterate, Evolutionary Astrology is available now. Forecast 2026 will be dropped into your account December 15th, and it explains that on the sales page. Thank you so much for spending some of your day with us here, and I say us collectively because this has been one big team effort. And especially thanks to the MMA team for letting me be a part of this very important project. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the audiobooks.